Final item of business today is the members' business debate on motion number 8602 in the name of Fiona-McLeod on recognising the value of community optometry. This debate will be concluded without any questions being put, and I would be grateful if those members who wish to participate in the debate could please press the request to speak buttons as soon as possible. I call on Fiona-McLeod to open the debate. 7 minutes, please.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. And can I begin by thanking the members across the parties for supporting my motion so that we could debate it here in Parliament this evening. And can I also welcome to the gallery members of Optometry-Scotland and also some of my local opticians in my constituency. I'm pretty sure I can spot that Peter Evans from Bearsden is here. And can I see Neil Drain from Kirkintilloch? Thank you very much for coming, gentlemen. And it was partly my visit to my local opticians that made me want to have this debate today, because when I went out in October, having met Optometry-Scotland at the SNP conference in October and learnt about the amazing amount of extra work that I didn't know that opticians did. And as many of you know, I used to work in the health service, and I was surprised that I still thought that an optician was someone who dispensed glasses, and that was it. And when I learnt at the stall what was going on and then went out to visit both Peter Evans and Neil Drain in my constituency, to find out just how much we're now moving into eye health care rather than just given us a pair of glasses which we need to read, I found really quite inspiring. And when I went out, I learnt about optometrists becoming independent prescribers. And I've been finding it quite difficult to get the figures, but I understand anything from 10 to 25% of optometrists in Scotland are now trained and registered as independent prescribers via Caledonia University. And of course that means that our optometrists are not just dispensing our glasses, and they're not just diagnosing ill health in our eyes, but they're actually able to treat that ill health in our eyes there in our local communities. And it was really interesting to hear as well about the Teach and Treat clinic at Stobhill Hospital, where local opticians can go work with a consultant ophthalmologist to learn the skills that they need to be doing this treatment in the community. And also, of course, to find out about the Scottish Government funding for things like digital fundus cameras for every practice in Scotland. But one of the things that really caught my eye when I was out meeting the optometrists was about the Sky Gateway and the electronic referrals that this will allow. Now, I understand that in 2010 saw the launch of the electronic patient referral programme as part of the integration of eye care services, and that's got a 6.6 million funding for 10 years from the Scottish Government. And again, from my years in the health service, the benefits of electronic referral means that that our independent prescribing optometrists are treating us locally. But then when they are diagnosing something that goes beyond that, they can refer appropriately on to secondary care. And of course, at the end of the day, the biggest thing in that for any patient is the reduced time from diagnosis to referral to treatment. And I just think that that's quite such a step forward, that our optometrists are now such an essential part of primary health care in our communities. And I understand that 20% of outpatient appointments in hospitals are for eye problems. So if we're doing a lot more of that diagnosis, treatment and only referral when appropriate to hospitals, then that 20% of outpatients will be coming down. And since we introduced this in 2010, I've read that there has been a 6% increase in referrals to outpatient appointments for eye care in the NHS in Scotland. But in England, that at the same period, it's been 20%. So we are seeing the benefits of referral, appropriate referral and treatment done as locally as possible. And a lot of you will say, well, what's my interest and why am I'm obviously enthusiastic about it. Why am I so enthusiastic about it? It's great when you go and find out something new and find out that yet again Scotland is world leading in a healthcare area. But for me, it's also about, this is about part of the preventative agenda, so that those of us with eye problems are being helped to prevent it getting worse in our local community. It's about community care, and it's about the best patient journey that we can have. And I also think it's incredibly important now, because 1 in 30 of us in Scotland suffer significant sight loss. But because of the ageing population, and you all know that I take a great interest in that because of my constituency interest in Strathkelvin and Bearsden. But because of the ageing population, we will see that significant sight loss will double in 20 years because of that. So, you know, this is all part of the preventative agenda, but also the agenda looking to the future to say to our patients, how well can we care for you, and how can we care for you where you want to be cared for? And as we get older, you know, looking at preventable sight loss, it's not just about sight loss, because other health problems come with visual impairment. If an elderly person has visual impairment, they are more likely to have falls and end up being hospitalised for something like that. They're also, interestingly, more likely to have poor nutrition, because if you've got visual impairment and you can't see your food, you don't enjoy it, so you don't eat it, and that has knock-on effects. And of course, it has the loss of independence that visual impairment brings, especially for older people, and the social isolation that that brings as well. So, for all these reasons, you know, I wanted to bring this debate to the Chamber, because I've been so impressed by what I've seen. I wanted to, through this debate, recognise the work that community optometrists are doing, and I wanted to be able to promote that work as well. And perhaps, to sum it up, it's best summed up by when I went to see both Neil and Peter, because they talked about all the years that they spent training to be optometrists, and that now they were actually using all their skills to be healthcare professionals and not just someone that sold you your specs. So thank you very much for your support for this debate this evening, and I look forward to hearing Ardell's contributions. Thank you.
Many thanks. We now turn to the open debate. Speeches of 4 minutes, please. And I call Rhoda Grant to be followed by Fiona-McLeod.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I firstly congratulate Fiona-McLeod for securing this debate? I think it's very important to bring this to the Parliament. Can I also pay tribute to the work of Optometry-Scotland and their work towards ensuring Scotland provides world-class eye care? It's desperately sad that there are still many people in Scotland who lose their sight through preventable illnesses, and therefore the debate is welcome in that it highlights to people the need to take their eye health seriously. People need to have regular eye checks and also have eye problems treated as a matter of urgency. There has been improvements in eye health care, testament to the efforts of Optometry-Scotland and other organisations such as RNIB, and they have rightly promoted the need for good services in our communities. Opticians in the community now interact with specialists in the acute centre. They're able to send test results and pictures electronically to eye specialists, and this cuts costs to the health service and also unnecessary appointments for patients. Patients can have their tests done locally at their own opticians, and should the optician be concerned, they can transfer these electronically to a specialist to look for. On many occasions, they may not require further treatment, so the patient doesn't need to attend for more eye tests in the acute sector. It cuts patient time, especially spent worrying about the outcome of these further tests. It's a win-win for both patient, and it also reduces the costs to the health service. There are obviously times when results do flag up issues that need further treatment, but this has saved time, and treatment can commence much more quickly if those results are sent electronically. The specialist knows the scale of the problem and what needs to be done before they ever see the patient, so treatment can start immediately, saving time, and could indeed that time save somebody's sight. Optometry is an area where we have proven that e-health works well, saving time, speeding up treatment, providing better services to patients, while at the same time saving money to the public purse. But it also has a huge benefit in my region, the Highlands and Islands, where people often live in remote rural areas. It's not easy to access and attend multiple appointments, sometimes huge distances away from home. And it can also be very difficult for people who, as they get older, have to depend on public transport, and public transport is very often non-existent in those areas. These advances have not happened by accident, and it's down to those who work in the sector for every level for the way that this has happened and the advances that have been made in this area. We also need to ensure that the level of service is available to everyone in our communities. We need to ensure that everyone takes their eye health seriously and has regular checks. However, we do know that those who live in our most deprived communities are less likely to look after their eye health. And this is a recurring pattern in all health inequalities, and we see it often, and it almost feels like we're unable to tackle this. So I would ask that the Scottish Government ensure that those in our most deprived communities have regular eye tests, and that means ensuring that services are available to them locally and in a manner that is accessible to them. Regular eye health checks can also flag up other health issues, not necessarily to do with eyes, but one I suppose that most people recognise as diabetes often shows up in eye health tests. Therefore, I welcome the debate, and while we've made great strides in eye health care since the Parliament began, I do believe we can't rest on our laurels, because there is much more to be done, and I look forward to seeing how this can be brought forward.
Thank you very much. And I now call Fiona-McLeod to be followed by Nanette Milne.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. And I'd also like to congratulate my colleague Fiona-McLeod on securing this evening's debate on such an important area of health policy, improving the eye health of people in Scotland, eliminating avoidable sight loss, and improving the inclusion, participation and independence of blind and partially sighted people. Now, these are ambitious aims, and there are also clearly wider benefits in terms of the public health agenda. Community optometry plays an essential role in delivering the NHS 2020 vision by providing diagnosis, prompt referrals and increasingly treatment in the community. Indeed, it's probably difficult to conceive of a clearer example of effective early intervention than to be able to prevent someone from losing their sight, not least given all of the dramatic impacts on health and well-being, as well as on NHS and social care services that sight loss can have. Now, community optometrists and Optometry-Scotland are therefore absolutely essential in delivering a service which has grown by 25% since free NHS eye examinations were introduced in 2006. And without them, we would not be seeing the progress that is already being made in improving Scotland's eye health. That is not to say that there is not more to do. For example, studies suggest that there remains a lower uptake of free eye examinations by low-income households, and to an extent this reflects wider concerns over the persistence of health inequalities, which remain a significant problem for Scotland, but should nevertheless concern us, and which was also highlighted by my colleague Rhoda Grant. We know, for example, that the incidence of type 2 diabetes has a direct relationship with deprivation, or as Scotland's 2012 report on health inequalities found that the incidence of type 2 diabetes increased significantly with deprivation. And in 2008, the incidence of type 2 diabetes was around 2.5% for the least deprived areas, but more than 4% in the most deprived areas. And with diabetes, of course, goes the potential risk of diabetic retinopathy, with the severe consequences that can have for patients' sight. Increasing the uptake of the universal eye examination, particularly by low-income households, is therefore another important measure in helping to address at least the symptoms of health inequalities. It also emphasises, in my view, the importance of a universal approach to providing health services in Scotland, which is crucial to underpinning the ambition to be the world leader in integrated eye care that my colleague Fiona-McLeod's motion refers to. And indeed, I think as elected members, we could all probably assist in making sure that our constituents are aware that they are entitled to a free eye check, know the benefits of actually taking up that entitlement, and the kind of fantastic eye care services that are being delivered in our high street opticians. Equally, the flexible, easy access to services that community optometrists provide, coupled with the direct electronic referral system to improve the patient route from primary to secondary care, will deliver lasting improvements and benefits by detecting conditions early once people are examined and making prompt, appropriate referrals. and with local optometrists, as my colleague Fiona-McLeod has already referred to, who have completed the necessary Optometry-Scotland training, now able to issue prescriptions to be able to treat eye conditions, and the streamlining and improving of eye care services is clearly set to continue. And in my view, all of this is a very welcome development, especially for some of our more rural and remote parts of the regions I represent in terms of South of Scotland in relation to Dumfries and Galloway and the borders. Now, Presiding Officer, we clearly have high ambitions to eliminate avoidable sight loss is a bold statement, but one which is absolutely right. And community optometrists have an absolutely vital role to play in delivering this objective, and I'm very pleased that tonight has offered an opportunity to highlight their vital contribution, as well as the ongoing innovative work to integrate eye care nationally with other NHS services and optometry professionals across Scotland, which hopefully will have a positive impact on levels of sight loss and ultimately improving the eye health of all people of Scotland, and doing this as locally as possible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call Nanette Millen to be followed by Stuart McMillan.
Thank you, Deputy Presiding Officer. And I too add my congratulations to Fiona-McLeod for bringing this debate before us to highlight the sometimes unsung heroes of the health profession that are community optometrists. As Fiona-McLeod said in her opening speech, most people will not realise that when they visit an optician for a sight test, they are in fact being examined by an optometrist who's undergone advanced professional training and is qualified to recognise and diagnose eye problems within the community and to recommend the appropriate treatment, or to refer on to a specialist hospital-based ophthalmologist if the patient's condition requires this. The prescribed treatment may simply be the required strength of lens to correct their vision, either within spectacles or as contact lenses. But optometrists also check eye health by measuring intraocular pressure to pick up on glaucoma, which can soon cause blindness if it goes untreated, and by carrying out examination of the retina, which can disclose complications of high blood pressure, diabetes, and again the possibility of glaucoma, which can all lead to impaired vision. Or, of course, macular degeneration, a very common cause of blindness in elderly people, which may or may not be treatable depending on which type it is, but which can only be treated if diagnosed early in its development. Optometrists, therefore, are at the front line of this area of medical care, as the first port of call for eye problems, and we're all well advised to attend for regular eye checks so that any problems can be picked up early and treated before our vision is permanently impaired. I too would like to pay tribute to the work of Optometry-Scotland, which north of the border provides an invaluable service in promoting the work of optometrists and expressing the views and indeed the concerns of its members. Lobbying is often seen as a dirty word these days, but I have to say that Optometry-Scotland is a very successful organisation at engaging with MSPs, with the Scottish Government and with other key stakeholders. In terms of its aims and ambitions, it's commendable that at its heart is raising awareness of the importance of regular eye examinations and encouraging optometrists to continually train to reach the highest standards of their profession. Considering that Optometry-Scotland was set up less than a decade ago, its achievements have been very impressive. I have no doubt, for example, that it played a significant role in the introduction of legislation under the Scottish Government's Health and Social Care Integration Directorate, which permits independent prescribing rights to optometrists. This initiative means that optometrists following rigorous training can now prescribe licensed eye-related medicines to patients under the NHS without them having to visit their GP or an ophthalmologist. Whilst I've had concerns raised with me by hospital specialists in the Grampian area following the closure of the eye emergency clinic in Aberdeen, that optometrists do not have sufficient training to deal appropriately with a number of problems which present for emergency care, I do believe that the new system generally appears to work well and will create efficiency savings within the NHS, something which I'm sure all members will welcome. The motion makes reference to the Scottish Vision Strategy, an offshoot of the UK Vision Strategy, which also complements Vision 2020, the global initiative to eradicate avoidable blindness by the year 2020. The refreshed Scottish Vision Strategy aims to maintain good eye health and to ensure that those with sight loss receive the appropriate services required. This builds on other recent advances in Scotland, and although I was not convinced personally of how practical it would be to introduce free eye tests for all when they were legislated for nearly a decade ago, I have to admit that my concerns were misplaced. I would add, of course, that these free eye tests were introduced in 2006 by the previous administration, in case anyone else wants to take credit. Fiona-McLeod's motion also makes reference to the worrying statistic that in the next 20 years the number of people in Scotland with sight loss could potentially double, most likely the result of an increasingly ageing population and the increasing incidence of long-term conditions like diabetes. And I would be interested to hear the Minister's thoughts on this in his summing up. I'd end once again by thanking Fiona-McLeod for leading the debate and by paying tribute to Optometry-Scotland for its effort to promote and develop community optometry throughout Scotland. Thank you.
Many thanks. I now call Stuart McMillan, who will be followed by Dennis Robertson.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. I'm pleased to have the chance to speak in today's debate, and I too congratulate my colleague Fiona-McLeod for securing it. I would encourage her to actually go along to the next cross-party group on visual impairment meeting when it takes place, and as convener of that particular cross-party group, this particular issue is something that's it's been an important topic that's been discussed on many an occasion at the meetings. Certainly in the role as convener, but also when I was an ordinary member of the cross-party group beforehand, it's something that came up many times. And I think certainly today it's only right that we actually give credit where it's due. And that certainly is the case with those providing such a valuable service to local communities. According to the latest figures, there are over 180,000 people across Scotland with significant sight loss, and this equates to about 1 in 30 people. However, as the motion states, this is set to increase mainly due to the ageing population that Scotland has. Yet over 50% of sight loss can be avoided, and many older people are needlessly living with sight loss. Almost 2/3 of sight loss in older people is caused by a refractive error and cataract. Eye health checks provide quick and convenient access to an expert, allowing for rapid diagnosis and timely intervention for treatment and also management of any condition. As with other conditions, most eye disorders respond better when detected early, resulting in shorter recovery time, less patient distress and a reduction in the overall care costs. And early diagnosis and intervention and the provision of information to people and their carers at the point of diagnosis is critical. That's why regular eye checks are so important and why the work of community optometrists is also so important. I believe that this is a service which is also highly valued by the public. Community optometry plays a key role within primary care. Eye health checks reduce the burden on secondary care, retain minor problems within the community and also improve the quality of referrals. And the service has led to a 4.5% reduction of referrals across Scotland, compared to an increase in England of approximately 23% over the same period. It's also worth highlighting in the debate that the role of the Scottish Vision Strategy that we've already heard from one or two of the previous speakers. This sets out the blueprint for improvements in eye care services in Scotland, giving direction to the work in this sector. Key strategy outcomes include the awareness and understanding of sight loss, early intervention, timely treatment and access to early and appropriate services and support, and also the full participation in society for those with sight loss. The Scottish Vision Strategy continues to enjoy the endorsement of a wide alliance of statutory health and social care bodies, voluntary organisations, eye health professionals and also individuals. A couple of quick points I just want to raise just before we finish.
Mr McMillan, sorry, could I stop you? I need to ask members if they could please check whether or not they have any mobile devices next to the broadcasting equipment, because we are having a degree of interference. Sure. Okay. Stuart McMillan.
Sorry, Presiding Officer. Just a couple of quick points I want to finish off on. The issue of the electronic referral. As I said earlier on, it's a point that's come up on more than one occasion within the cross-party group, and it's something that when you've heard, when people have come into the cross-party group and actually told you about their story of how the electronic referral has actually helped them and it's actually helped save their sight. It's such a huge step forward in eye health care and also the kind of eye health that we actually have within Scotland. But also the second point, just it's regarding the issue of the free eye tests. Yes, these were introduced in 2006, and I absolutely congratulate the previous Labour and Liberal Democrat executive for actually bringing these forward, for bringing this universal policy forward, and also congratulate the current Scottish Government for maintaining it. It's been such a huge boost to eye health care within Scotland. To conclude with, the value of community optometry can be seen in the enhanced role it provides in communities across Scotland, providing much needed early intervention and also detection of eye disorders. And I'm happy to support this motion and also to recognise the value of community optometry and the work of Optometry-Scotland. Thank you.
Many thanks. And our final open debate speaker is Dennis Robertson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. I'll begin by thanking my colleague Fiona-McLeod for bringing this debate to the Chamber. Presiding Officer, I've had a long-established relationship with Optometry-Scotland, and prior to that with the Scotland Optometry Council and the Scottish Contact Lens Society as well. And I mention this because in my previous role, when I was with Guide Dogs many years ago, I used to speak at their conferences, and I was fortunate enough also to speak with their colleagues in Northern Ireland when they had the joint conferences. And it was to go beyond the eye. It was to actually understand that behind the eye there is a person who has feelings, a person who quite often is anxious and sometimes dismayed at what is happening with regard to their sight. I was also very fortunate that I was invited to present lectures at Caledonian University to the optometry students in their final year. And again, it was just to emphasise the fact of the person behind the eye, and to get optometrists to realise that when they're explaining a condition to the person, to the patient, they need to explain it in terms that is understandable to that patient. When you're talking about a cataract, and perhaps maybe a removal of a cataract, that's fine. But quite often in the past that people used to believe, and I'm not blaming optometry for this, and maybe not even ophthalmologists, but people used to believe that when they had their operation they would get their sight back. What they failed to tell them was, you'll get your remaining sight. If you had macular degeneration and a cataract, you would still have macular degeneration. So you wouldn't get your full vision back. And it's that sort of information that we need to encourage our optometrists to convey to the patients when they're seeing them. At the SAP conference, I was talking to one or two of the optometrists there. And again, they understand and realise that perhaps as a signposting agency, they can do more. I can go back to the mid-80s, Presiding Officer, when I was working with Sudhi Patel, maybe a name that some of the optometrists maybe even cringe at when they hear the name. But Sudhi Patel was probably a forerunner of the low vision service within Glasgow. And at that time, they were sort of doing the one-stop shop, bringing low vision basically to the patient group through the social work service. That was a forerunner basically for the services that we see now. And RNIB continue and have continued through the years to take that forward. And through the eye care health, through sensory and through the new strategy for vision in Scotland, we are continuing to see the benefits, because early intervention is what saves sight. If you have wet macular degeneration, you only have a small window of opportunity to save that person's sight. If it goes undetected, the person will lose their sight. With other conditions such as glaucoma, retinitis pigmentosa, various other conditions that could be early detection. And optometrists can give that advice, the advice and understanding to the patient group. And the fact that community optometry now are doing much more than they've done in the past means that quite often people don't have to go to their GP. They can go to their optometrist and see their optometrist, not taking up valuable time from a GP who, I'm sorry, maybe not have the expertise to actually diagnose what is wrong with that person's sight in the first place. I think what has shifted, Presiding Officer, over the years is the partnership working. The partnership working between optometry, ophthalmology and social services. It's a partnership which was well overdue, but a partnership which I think has been driven by Optometry-Scotland. And I think ophthalmology have now embraced that, to realise that community optometry are doing an excellent and very valuable job, because they're seeing patients through the community optometry service that no longer have to go to the eye clinics and take up, again, valuable time in the hospital. So I congratulate Optometry-Scotland for the work that they continue to do. I congratulate Optometry-Scotland for the work that they are probably going to embrace in the future. And my message to Optometry-Scotland is this: remember the patient beyond the eye. The eye is the window to that patient. But the patient needs understanding of their condition, and it needs to be told to them in words that they can understand. Thank you, Presiding Officer.
Thank you very much. Can I now invite Michael Matheson to respond to the debate? Minister, you have around 7 minutes to do so.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Can I begin by offering my congratulations to Fiona-McLeod in securing time for this debate. And I've listened with great interest to all of the contributions here this evening. I want to use this debate, though, as an opportunity to recognise, on behalf of the Scottish Government, the very valuable work provided by High Street optometrists and the role of Optometry-Scotland. As a government, we have a commitment to community-based eye care services. And the reason we have that is because we believe there is a very strong, compelling case for continuing to deliver services in this way, for some of the reasons which were highlighted by members in their own contributions. Because for people, it can be convenient, it's flexible access to eye care services with the real prospect that conditions will be identified at an early stage. It also helps to make sure the burden on hospital care is reduced by ensuring that patients with conditions that could be dealt with outside a hospital setting are treated appropriately within the primary care setting. And also, appropriate care can be delivered much more cost-effectively in the community than in the hospital environment, without any detriment to the impact of the quality of care that an individual patient would receive. Now, a number of members have highlighted in particular the free NHS eye examination. This whole policy area, which was introduced by the last executive, I believe is an exemplar of the benefits of preventative health care. This comprehensive eye examination of eye health affords the best prospect of identifying treatable eye conditions at an early stage in their development, for the very reason that Dennis Robertson just outlined as being so important. This examination is provided within our own communities on the High Street by optometrists and is universally available to everyone. Now, members will be aware that it's a policy which has proven to be extremely popular with the public in Scotland. Take-up continues to grow. For the year ending the 31st of March 2013, there were more than 1.9 million examinations in Scotland, a number that equates to roughly 36% of the total population in Scotland. Now, this to me demonstrates that the people of Scotland are taking on board the message about the importance of maintaining good eye health and making good use of the services which are in place, which is to be welcomed. But, Presiding Officer, I think it's also important to say something about the financial commitment to community-based eye care services. In the last financial year, 2012-13, NHS Scotland spent £70.8 million on the provision of free NHS eye exams. This represents a very significant financial commitment, which I'm sure members will recognise, particularly when it's contrasted with the expenditure of just over £20 million in 2005-2006 on the predecessor of the universal examination, which was the NHS eye test. However, this is just part of the Scottish Government's commitment to eye care. In addition, through National Education for Scotland, the Government also provides £1 million per annum for optical education and training to support the free NHS eye examination. We also made funding available to optical practices to purchase digital cameras and other associated equipment to facilitate the examination and to take photographs of the eyes to monitor a patient's condition, again to build on further improvements within the overall service. Now, I'm sure members will all recognise that prevention is a key part of our eye healthcare policy, and we know that the universal free NHS eye examination has delivered real benefits to the people of Scotland. One study has estimated that between 2,000 and 5,500 patients have received treatment for preventable sight loss that they would not otherwise have received. We can begin also to see the very substantial benefits when we consider that the RNIB estimate that sight loss has an associated cost of over £17,500 per person per year. And of course, the personal cost of blindness is impossible to determine. A partial or full-sighted loss results in a loss of confidence and can result in a loss of income and dependency on others. Members will also be aware of the significant impact that the change in Scotland's demography has on our healthcare system. As we grow older, we need to provide increasing funding for care costs, and the prevalence for conditions such as diabetes, glaucoma, etc. increase with age. The age profile of the population in Scotland is set to change dramatically over a comparatively short period of time. Maybe if I can give members just some figures around this to illustrate the nature of it. With the proportion of the population aged under 15 due to fall from 32% to 16%, while the proportion aged 65 and over has increased from 5% to 17% of our population. This trend is set to continue, and our health service, including our eye care services, will need to be able to meet that challenge. However, I believe that we have a very strong base on which to work from, and here I would like to acknowledge the very important role played by Optometry-Scotland in helping to bring in and successfully deliver the free eye examination. This simply would not have been possible without strong partnership working. And also to extend that theme of partnership working, I think it's fair to say that as a result of the work done by Optometry-Scotland, NHS boards, RNIB Scotland, the Scottish Eye Care Group, the National Services Scotland, we now generally have what is acknowledged as being a world leader in the prevention of eye health care services. However, we want to build on that good progress that we have made, and, for example, we are well advanced in implementing the electronic referral system that patients can benefit from between the optometrist and eye health care services that several members have made reference to. These are real benefits that I believe that will continue to allow us to build on the progress that we have made and to make sure that we speed up the process for patients being referred into the appropriate system as and when it's appropriate to them when they require further care. Presiding Officer, as a government, we recognise the very important value of community optometry in the success of eye care services in Scotland, and in particular the role of Optometry-Scotland in bringing that about. But of course, we need to remain vigilant to the challenges of an ageing population, but equally we also need to acknowledge the strengths of the current service and that we are well placed to build on those achievements in the years to come.
Many thanks, and that concludes Fiona-McLeod's debate on recognising the value of community optometry, and I now close this meeting of Parliament.